Scandinavian nations are almost often included among the top 10 on lists that rank human progress in different parts of the world. Scandinavia appears to be the greatest in every aspect, including democracy, civil rights, a lack of corruption, public trust, and the standard of living. But what is the formula for this achievement? The Nordic model is a distinctive fusion of social values and economic principles. But what precisely is the Nordic model? Why is it so effective? Is the Nordic region's reputation well-deserved? Why then don't we use their model elsewhere if it is? So, to get answers to these questions, let's get started. During the interwar years of the 1930s, Scandinavia was having a difficult time. It was experiencing one of its worst disasters and was contending with various very serious political and financial problems. The largest financial crisis of the 20th century had a significant impact on most of the world at the time, and the Nordic nations were badly impacted. In Denmark, the unemployment rate was about 40%, businesses were going bankrupt, and financial stress in other areas of Europe fostered political radicalism and populism, as extremes on both ends of the political aisle gained power. Fascists were challenging the democratic process itself, portraying it as ineffectual and fragile, while Scandinavian communists were seeking to topple the system by inciting class conflict and putting the lower classes against the elites. The Nordic nations had to take action to handle both the economic problem and the political difficulties to survive the crisis. As a result, the solutions that each of them settled on helped to establish the Nordic model and the future appearance of Scandinavia. First, the Nordic nations concluded that significant welfare spending and government-funded programs to assist those afflicted by economic troubles are the best ways to maintain society during times of crisis. To give individuals who were unemployed or too old to find work, previously existing programs like old age and unemployment payments were drastically boosted. At this time, the modern welfare state came into being and was a foundational element of the Nordic model. The primary programs started in the 1930s were expanded upon by the Nordic nations in the ensuing decades, but the fundamental concept remains the same. Supporting the lower classes who need it most and integrating them into society rather than excluding them is necessary if you want to maintain society cohesive and prevent conflicts between classes. The reasoning is that although it's expensive, it's still worthwhile since if you don't assist them, their misery, instability, and unemployment would ultimately cost you more. Because of this, the welfare system in Scandinavia has a vast social safety net to ensure that even if you lose your job, you won't starve. And the government actively works to get you back up and to work as soon as possible. The Scandinavian social state's goal is to help citizens, not to make them dependent on government assistance forever. Interestingly strict and giving at the same time, Scandinavian nations are. Unemployed people receive considerable unemployment benefits, but only while actively looking for work and adhering to the same practical reasoning. The welfare state in Scandinavia makes a lot of efforts to help the underprivileged get to the middle class. Economic equality and a strong middle class are beneficial for social cohesiveness, while having a large number of really impoverished people costs money and divides society. Because of this, everyone has access to free or nearly free social, healthcare, and educational services in the Nordic countries, which also place a strong emphasis on ensuring that everyone has a roughly equal chance of achieving a successful profession and a high standard of living. The drawback of this is that the Nordic nations are known for their high taxes and that the welfare state is not free. Compared to 22% in the US and 24% in the UK, the average citizen contributes 45% of their earnings in taxes. However, taxes in Scandinavia act as a tool for wealth redistribution and aid in maintaining low levels of economic inequality as well. They are not only a mechanism to give the state enough money to cover all expenses. Folkhemmet, or people's home, was the name given to this idea in Sweden when it was initially developed in the 1930s. This name implies that the government is not just a disengaged administrative entity, but a shelter or a family for its citizens. According to this idea, all citizens are members of a single family, and as such, everyone must be treated fairly and equitably. Even more crucially though, what counts most is the family's overall well-being for all members. Because of this, the Scandinavian model rose to prominence as the compromise during the Cold War in the English-speaking world. The second component of the Nordic model, which also emerged in the 1930s, was dubbed the Great Compromise. Employee and employer unions in Sweden, Norway and Denmark concur that a solution must be found that would satisfy all parties to avoid a clash between classes. As a result, companies in all the Nordic states decided to provide fair wages, secure employment conditions, and a daily work limit of no more than 10 hours. As long as their employers fulfill their promise, the employees agreed to refrain from protesting and going on strike. Even today, a significant number of employment conditions are handled directly without the involvement of the government, continuing this unique style of collaboration between employees and business owners. Most Nordic nations struck a different political compromise during the same period. Since the 1930s, social democratic parties have ruled the country. Still, they came to an agreement with other parties not just to enact the required changes, but also to demonstrate that democracy still functions and that political compromise is feasible. There is one additional factor, though, that clarifies why the Nordic model is ineffective elsewhere. The distinctive cultural values and social traits, which can be summed up as social trust, are frequently ignored. People in other nations wouldn't want to forego the rewards of their labor due to excessive taxes, and they wouldn't have faith in the government's ability to distribute them either. However, because they trust their authorities and one another, Scandinavians are ready to contribute and participate. As a result, they are prepared to give up their income and sustain the welfare state. It's trickier to explain why Scandinavians have such high levels of interpersonal trust. Some researchers refer to the impact of Lutheranism, a Protestant sect of Christianity that once served as Scandinavia's official church and places a strong emphasis on justice and egalitarian society. Others counter that it's the environment, citing the idea that individuals from colder regions typically have greater levels of social confidence since they traditionally had to depend on one another and their close neighbors for sustenance. The Nordic regions may have enjoyed significantly higher internal and external tranquility, which could be another contributing reason. The last time a major political figure was assassinated in Denmark was in 1286, while the last time Sweden had been at war was in 1814. Geography is yet another factor. In the past, the Scandinavian states had sizable areas with great separations between towns, making it challenging for the Nordic monarchs and nobility to maintain control over their populace. In order to control their territory and not merely collect taxes, the ruling class had to make an effort to offer services to their people. Because of this restricted authority, a class of independent farmers developed, which later served as the basis for a powerful middle class. The Nordic countries are characterized by their combination of vast land masses and sparse populations. Some of the major European nations with some of the lowest population densities in the world may be found in Scandinavia. The small populations of these nations may easily share in the substantial wealth of these nations. This indicates that the GDP per capita is very great in the country. For these nations, it's comparatively simple to meet their own requirements while also exporting high-quality products and services. The bottom line is that the elements that made the Nordic model conceivable date far in the past and are less concerning political choices and more about the special set of circumstances that have influenced the Scandinavian communities for many centuries. It's hard to pinpoint just one particular reason, and it was probably a mix of all of them. Since you can't replicate the fundamental factors of the Nordic model without them, it won't work or won't operate as well. It's practically difficult to copy the Nordic model elsewhere. The Scandinavian nations are undoubtedly far from ideal, but the reality remains that their model has succeeded and has been one of the 20th century's greatest success stories. So guys, that's pretty much of it. Share your thoughts on the Nordic model. Is it possible to implement it in other countries? Let us know in the comments below. See you in our next video. Till then, take care.